Hello, Celeste, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Celeste, how do the Jehovah's Witnesses come into your life?
Well, I was pretty much raised in. Um, I was about 3 or 4 years old when my mom got baptized. Um, we moved into this like apartment building when like a three floor, three apartments, when I was like a year old. And the people on the first floor were studying with the witnesses. And when my mom moved in, they would leave the door open so that she would hear them studying. And she was always like very religious. So she heard them talking about the Bible and came in like, well, what about this question? What about that question about the Bible? And she said, I was always impressed that they used the Bible to answer those questions. That's what she said drew her in. So I mean, basically, like I don't have a memory of a life before before the witnesses because I was extremely young when she started. I think my last birthday was, like I said, it was my third or fourth birthday, and then she got baptized like a couple months later.
Okay, so you're super young. You don't really have any memories of being a non-witness. So
Yeah. No.
your mom got baptized when you're very young, and then talk to me about your life as a Jehovah's Witness.
Um, it was it was a lot. So because of being in so young, I started like witnessing at 5 years old, knocking on doors. Which is a lot for a 5 year old. I very vividly remember like people screaming at us, and like there's this little 5 year old at your door, and you're just screaming. Um, and so that was obviously really stuck with me. Um, and then we had our Kingdom Hall was very young couples. So there were a lot of kids in our hall, which I know it could kind of go either way. um, so I grew up around a lot of other people my age in the Kingdom Hall, which I think made for a kind of like a different experience for me. And now like I think 50% of us have left, 50% like are still in. But yeah, and they would have like, sleepovers, and it was very like they tried to kind of fill in those gaps like, well, we don't celebrate Christmas, but we're going to do a, a dance party or something, to make up for the fact that we're not celebrating all these holidays. We don't celebrate your birthday, but we're going to go to, we're going to rent a limo and go to this restaurant in Boston. Like they would do these little things to kind of make you feel less like you're missing out. And they had that unique opportunity to do that because they were like a dozen kids in that all within the same age range. um but yeah, I remember struggling for myself. I have discovered recently that I have autism. And so I was social, but like I didn't do it right. And like you kind of have to be social with if you're Jehovah's Witness, you have to be social. So it's like I wanted to be, but I don't know, like nobody responded to the way I was being social. And like I never really clicked. Like I would go to these things, I would go to the get-togethers and whatever, and like they were all best friends and I wasn't. Like I was always just kind of like the outsider there. It also didn't help that I was also one of the oldest kids in the group. um but yeah, so that made my experience different. um where I think I was able to see it differently because I was always on the outside. you know I spent longer than some of my peers that left in because I kept trying to like, but I can be like you guys. Like, look, I can do these things too, and like kind of forcing myself into that peg of the religion, and it just never worked. um, but yeah, and obviously it took me till I was 21 to leave. And I never did get baptized. I started trying to do that whole like the studying, the special studying you're supposed to do, the questions you're supposed to answer. Um, when I was 19, 20, and like I started going on service more and everything. And then I don't know what happened. Like I just kind of stopped like going out in service more and like wasn't going to the meetings as much. I had made some work friends, so I don't know if it was that. And I was just like, slowly pulling away. Um, but yeah, and to this day I'm grateful I didn't get baptized. But
So you never got baptized as a witness. Do you have siblings? Was your mom active? What was the situation like with your family?
so my mom was never married to my father. She had actually, when we moved into the apartment building, she was coming from an abused women's shelter, getting away from my father. Um, and I blessedly never had any siblings. Um, because she wasn't the best person either, which I think was kind of, she always had like that victim, like she always wanted to be a victim, like not that she always was, I'm realizing now. She kind of like put herself in situations that would cause her to become a victim, or she'd create situations that would make it like, oh, poor me, look what's going on. Which, now I see like that's why she was so drawn to being a Jehovah's Witness, like that they kind of like prey on that victim mentality a lot. Um, so yeah, I've always been like so happy that I'm an only child. And I think in a way too, that made it easier for me because it was just her. She did try, of course, preaching to, she has a sister. She has he passed away a couple years ago, but she had a brother that she would preach to all the time. My grandmother, before she passed away, she would preach to her all the time. But my grandmother had like it was a stack like that big of watchtowers on like just an end table that she never looked at them, but she didn't want to throw them out because I was also preaching to her. And it's like her little granddaughter coming in being so excited about this thing, and it's like, no, but I'm not gonna show like throw them out in front of you or rip them in front of you or anything. Like I'm just gonna leave them here and just please stop. So yeah, it was just the two of us for the whole 17 years.
Okay. And as you left and you decided you didn't want to be a witness, what was that transition like for you?
Um like I said, I started making some work friends. And I started hanging out with them after work when I turned 21. They actually took me out drinking. And in my mind, I'm like, no, I'm just celebrating that I can drink. I'm not celebrating my birthday. The lies we tell ourselves to not feel that overwhelming guilt that they put on us. But after that, I don't know, like I started thinking more about, and this is how I put it when I left. I called one of her friends and I was like, "Listen, I'm gonna tell my mom in like a couple days that I'm leaving. I'm not gonna be a Jehovah's Witness anymore. I want you to know so that you can be there to support her because I know this is gonna be hard for her. Here's my reasons. She got a chance to look at other religions. She got a chance, in her when she was my age, she got to explore. She explored like several different religions as well. I used to joke and say she was everything but Jewish. Like she explored everything. Um and so I was like, I think I deserve that right too. And I said to the person when I was talking to them, like, you guys keep saying that it's the truth, but I want that proof. And if it's the truth, then I'm going to be back because it's the truth. Like, doesn't that just make sense? So in my mind, it was like, well, I'm probably going to come back because it's the truth. This is the one true religion. So nothing else is going to hold a candle. Um, and so then I told my mom, and of course I was still living with her at the time, and it was just hysterics. just like I had just killed her basically. And like I am so glad that I stayed strong through that and didn't let her like guilt me into, all right, I'll just stay like a little bit long. Like in my mind too, like, at this point I'm an adult. Like you got to make this choice when you were an adult. I'm making this choice now for my life. And it wasn't there wasn't anything else. It was just that. It was just like, hey, I want to make this choice for myself. And it's so funny. I remember I was seeing a therapist at the time, and so she was helping me through this. And I remember saying when I was going to do it, and it was like Thanksgiving. And she was like, "Well, shouldn't you wait till after the holidays?" It's like it doesn't matter. Like it didn't even dawn on me that it was Thanksgiving. But because she said that, I will never forget that it was Thanksgiving. But yeah, and her friend was really nice about it. Like she was a little sad, but she was always like good to me and everything. Um, and she was just like, okay, yeah, like I'll be there for your mom when you tell her, like I'll make sure when you get to tell her, I'll make sure to call her that day. After, you've talked to her. Um, but then like so after I left, so I did explore religions. Um I ended up falling into paganism as my chosen sort of path to go. And a friend of mine at that time, she was Wiccan. So she was like, here, like, if you're gonna research things, research this. Um, and so I did on my work computer. Never once did I do it at home because, God forbid I let demons in or whatever by researching anything like that on the home computer. So, and in my mind at the time, it was like, I'm respecting your home, I'm not doing this in your home. Um, but I bought like a book, or I don't even know what the book was at this point, but I bought a book, or my friend gave it to me something, and I left it in my room, and my mom went through my things and found this book, freaked out, and was like, you need to make a choice. You can stop, because at this point in her mind she's like, well, you made your choice, that you're pagan, you're Wiccan, whatever. And she's like, you can either, stop your paganism, but I don't remember how she put it, or you can get out of my house. And so I didn't even say anything. I turned around, I packed my things, I called my friend, and I was like, listen, I need a place to stay. And she, of course, in her mind, she's like, I didn't kick you out, I gave you a choice. And I was, and I used to try to point out to her, so if you were given that choice, you would see that as a choice then. Like your religion, or your you leave, like which is it going to be? Like you would have chosen your religion. um but yeah, and so it was rocky with her, and like it did end up sticking with paganism. So of course it's always been like, after that she was like, oh, I had to get my house exercised, and I was like, mom, I never did anything in your like, I never brought it into your house out of respect for you. Like, and it's just like this whole thing afterwards. And every once in a while she would like bring it up, but she never stopped talking to me. Which I hear all these stories of people where it's like, oh, my mom, my dad won't, like, they won't speak to me, my siblings won't speak to me now. And I think for her it was because she is abusive in her own thing. It has nothing to do with being a Jehovah's Witness, but I think for her it was like her way of like getting to still play that victim to everybody else. Like, oh, poor me, my daughter's not a witness anymore. Like, she's off dating worldly people, and all these things from me not being a witness that she could pick on, and just like pick and choose all these little things to bring back and be like, this is why. So yeah, she never, it didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter if I was saying that they're a cult. It didn't matter if I was saying bad things about them. She just brushed it all. I know. your your face, like, you can tell how that's so shocking. But yeah, she just stuck with it. I don't speak to her now because of other reasons, But yeah, it was a very different experience, I think, for me than a lot of at least the stories that I hear from other people of, what they've had to go through with their families when they leave. And I know it's not everybody. I know there's some people that, their families are kind of like, okay, we'll just keep this not about religion, but for the most part, my cat is mad that I'm not paying attention to him.
Okay, so it sounds like it was kind of an easy transition for you, especially because you weren't baptized and you,
Mhm.
your mom was still speaking to you. Did you have any really close friends inside the congregation that you lost?
Not really.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
Yeah, like I said, I was always like on the outside. I remember my mom saying to me like, "Oh, well, there's just something about you that people don't like that are put off by." And I was like, "Okay, what? What is it?" Like, tell me so I can work on that or fix it or whatever. Like, and now I recognize it as just like I don't know, I have this like socially awkward quality to me, like where I'm very social. I'm very much an extrovert, but at the same time, I have these autistic traits that just make it like I don't know quite what to say in certain social situations, or I'm too honest in certain social situations. And I don't see that. I don't see like, oh, this is I shouldn't say something like that. I shouldn't be this brutally honest with people. Like, that's not okay. Um, it's just like, what? What did I say? What did I do? A couple of people when I was older tried to like, reach out and just I don't know, like try to be friends with me, I guess, cuz I was just kind of on my own. And like I remember specifically hanging out with them like one time and I had fun. But then it's like didn't happen again. And especially like at that point, we switched halls when I was 16. And at that point, like most people have already made their groups. It's very clicky. You don't unless you're not part of the cliques, it's sometimes hard to see that like, oh boy, is it very clicky in the kingdom halls.
So true. So true. I think that's for every single congregation in the whole
Yeah.
world, especially in the teenagers and the young kids. And it's
Yep.
okay. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Celeste. Is there anything that you feel like you missed out that you would like to add to this interview?
Um Well, one thing that I was thinking, like leading up to this, I think the hardest thing for me with leaving was still having the mentality, the Jehovah's Witness mentality. And it took years before I stopped thinking like Armageddon's real. Um, if I don't go back at some point, like I'm gonna die in Armageddon. If I don't, live my life in a certain way, that's gonna happen. Like this guilt hanging over me constantly. And then I was dating this guy that I was talking to him about it. And he was like, he knew a little bit about what Jehovah's Witnesses believe. And he said to me, like, wait, so they think everybody comes back to life, like every single person that has ever died. And he was like, do you know how many people that is? Like, do you know how big the earth is? Like, how much livable space is like there's not enough space now in a lot of places where there's like Boston specifically. um and it just like it was like light dawning for the first time ever, and I started thinking of it like in a more logical than emotional way. um and then after like that was when I finally was like, oh yeah, like this isn't real. this is this is impossible. Um and then eventually I did find there's I think it's like jwfacts.org or something is the website. And I had stumbled on that at one point, and at first I thought it was a Jehovah's Witness website. I started reading it, and I was like, "Oh no, it's not." um, and that helped me so much to see the um the hypocrisy in their statements. Mostly was what I was looking at, was how, like, in this year they said this thing, but then this year they said this thing, which was a totally different thing than they were saying this previous year. And that was something that they tout, like, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. And so to see that in black and white from their own publications side by side, like, that was like the final thing that I needed to fully mentally come away from the religion. Because it's like, even if you physically leave and you stop going, it doesn't mean that your brain is like, oh no, yeah, it's not real. And like I said, I didn't leave with the intention of like, oh no, this isn't good, this is a cult, this is, these aren't nice people. Like, I thought everybody was really nice. Like, I honestly, I think I got pretty lucky with the kingdom halls that I was in. um it was, they were they weren't terrible people. Like, they were actually pretty good people. One of the people in the hall was actually the first person to tell me, like, hey, so the way your mom treats you isn't okay. Like, that's not normal. Which is, again, like, that's something that's sort of surprising. Instead of them just sweeping it away, like, oh no, it's fine, it's your parent, like, you do whatever they say. No, no, she was like, no, this isn't okay. um so I had a different experience in that way, and I think that's why it was also harder for me mentally to, like, it's easy if they're nice people. It's easy for you to be like, "Oh, okay. I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to associate with these people. Like, they're being mean to me. They're picking on me, whatever the case may be." But when they're, nice people and they're being good to you, like, it makes it so much harder for you to see that. And it's like, so to this day too, I'm glad for the stories of people that say it's it's the religion that's the problem, not the people that are at the lower levels, at the lower levels, at least the people that are in it. Um, that they think that they haven't figured out. They think that, they have this hope for, seeing loved ones again, seeing people that they have lost again. And, that keeps them that keeps them going through this. They've made friendships through this. They've joined one of the cliques and, they're part of that. And they're not they're not bad people inherently. And even because I know people hate them going knocking on doors and everything. All the jokes that we see online about that. And it's like they don't like it either, but they feel like, well, we have to do this. We have to, make the best of it. And, like, I even going door to door, I remember we would play games in the car, or, like, we'd sing kingdom melodies in the car, and like, I love to sing, so that was fun for me. um but yeah, it was never, in that sense, the people weren't what kind of led to me leaving, and led to me thinking like, oh, this seems like maybe not the most scriptural like biblical place to be, like, they're not actually following the Bible. Um, but yeah, and I hope that other people listen to these stories and hear that, like, yeah, it can take you time. Like, you can physically be out, and it can still, that guilt will hang, especially if you were raised in, especially if it took you 20, 30 years to get away. Like, that guilt doesn't just, vanish. It can take time, and that's okay.
Yeah, I feel like it's all about questioning the beliefs that got that you currently have. Like a lot of the beliefs that you have,
Mhm.
you don't even know were given to you by the witnesses. So question
Yes.
everything because we weren't allowed to question anything as witnesses, critical things.
Right.
So now that you're not,
Right.
question everything, question all of your beliefs, question everything that all the information that you're getting put in, whether it's from like society or another religion.
Mhm.
Like ask yourself, is this resonating with me? I think a lot of people just take on information and they don't really understand that you get to
You get to
create,
decide.
yeah, you get to create your own beliefs essentially now
Yeah.
that you're not a witness anymore. And
Mhm.
it's like, oh, I get to decide what I believe in. This is a really fascinating idea. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really great idea, really great concept. Thank you so much, Celeste. I think that even though you didn't get baptized, there's a lot of people that are going to be able to resonate with your story of just like leaving, and then the fact that you just said too, there's a lot of really great people inside the organization. It's the religion
Yeah.
itself that is not the good thing, the what is
Yeah.
making people the way that they are. So thank you again, Celeste, for
Mhm.
coming on my channel and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.